Hi, I'm Sergeant Case with the Battle Creek Police Department. I'm here to help out with the virtual tour of our current Battle Creek Police Station. We're going to go through today and point out some of the things that are issues with our current station so that people are aware of where we're at and what we have and what we'd like to get to in the future. You just came in through the front doors, but they're actually the back doors. It's not easy to get into the actual police department at the moment. Officers enter on the front side and citizens are requested to enter on the back side, which is actually next to City Hall. So when they come in through these doors, again, not easy to get to, we come into a front entry area where people have access to the records department through a small window, and then obviously to our front desk personnel. But as you look around the room, I think you can see that this room has seen better days. There's old carpet. Carpet's been taped to the tile. We've got damage to some of the wood and the siding that's here, and specifically the furniture. Most of it is functional, but well worn, well used, and visible damage. Along with that, this entry area had, at one point, bathrooms for people, but through issues with plumbing and other things, those bathrooms are not usable anymore, and they're actually currently used for fingerprints and for storage. So this room, again, hard to get to, old, some damage on equipment, and really it's just not a friendly and warm place for people to come when they need police assistance. So let's move from this front area through, and we'll talk about some other areas within the police department. As you come into the main area of the police department, there are different hallways that are kind of offset from each other. No hallways line up. It's not an open floor plan. And part of the reason for that is this building was built with Cold War era construction, meaning it was designed to prevent damage from bomb blasts, not to be functional to mingle with the community or to interview folks or talk to people. So again, it looks like a fairly large building, but because it's divided up and there are so many walls and other things, there's one of the first doors that we come to here, it's got a private sign on it, is a women's bathroom. But this women's bathroom doubles as a records storage area. Again, because we don't have a ton of storage space. So we have women's bathrooms, and again, not in the best of shape, in the same area that we have paperwork storage. So not very convenient or conducive to folks that need to use facilities. And as we talked about before, the bathrooms out front are no longer functional in the entry area. Those are again storage and fingerprint rooms. So as we continue through, we come down and we will take a look at the men's restrooms. A couple of things that we have issues with at this building, and one that we'll talk about when we get to the basement, is we have consistent sewer and water problems. So oftentimes, probably once a month might be extreme, but there'll be sewer backups or water problems within the building. But again, as you come in here, the city at some point put in waterless urinals, so the odor in the men's bathroom is pretty extreme. As of just the other day, and again, they fixed it. There was one of the sinks that was not working. Currently it is. But again, as you look at the walls and what have you, the tile, there's cracks in the tile, damage to the grout. Just not really a place that we want to have people come in. Again, we do business with state, local, federal agencies, along with the public as a whole. As you look at the stalls and the doors, we don't have to get too deep. But again, they're very worn, very used, just not a very friendly place or friendly environment for people to come in and use. We're going to take a walk downstairs now. Again, you can access the basement in a couple of different ways. As you go down the stairs, you can tell that this, again, this building is old construction. This building was designed for 60 people, and we currently have roughly 140 working out of the building. So when we look at space and different things, that's why we had to convert bathrooms to closets and different things, because we just didn't have the space. When we come down, it's an old structure. In the past, they've used some of these areas for property that comes in, stolen property, or needs to be returned. But what's very interesting about this area is it's very dusty, very dirty, small really for the amount of vehicles that we need to bring in, especially if there's weather, inclement weather, snow, other things. There's really not a lot of space for a lot of vehicles. But as you look through, you look around a couple things that are very interesting. This structure is not built, but we can run lines through the walls because it's made out of brick, again, Cold War era construction. Most all of the important lines, like the fiber optic cables to run computer systems and what have you, are all exposed wiring. So if you look at the roof, everything from electrical to piping to computer wiring is all exposed. Meaning if somebody came in here, let's just say a tow truck pulled a car in and had something hanging, it could damage some pretty important equipment that we would need. Just because the structure doesn't allow for us to put that in place that's safe and easy to get to. Another thing that's very interesting, all of our radios and computer systems, all of their equipment is housed in this area. Now again, this area tends to accumulate dust, inclement weather. We'll talk about that more in a minute, but again, we have sewage issues with this building consistently. And again, you see our computer equipment and our radio systems are all housed, exposed, in the same area that we have to deal with, again, the dust, the sewage leaks, and what have you. So, again, we try to do the best with what we have, but the space is limited, and this is not really a conducive space to have technical equipment like that, but we currently do. We're going to go here a little further to our basement indoor firearms range. It's probably kind of hard to see all of this, but this range, just like everything else, is old. And numerous times we've had to come through and do removal of lead and other things inside this range. As you can see, there's basically 3 stalls at the moment, but we have roughly 114 sworn officers. Firearms is something that we need to do a handful of times a year. And again, this space is very, very limited. On top of that, it's in rough shape, and we've been grandfathered in, but the ventilation system for this room is poor. To redo the ventilation system or redo this range would be an extremely large figure. So we try to get by the best we can at the moment, but it's definitely not the space that we need. And there are definitely many issues in this basement, but one of which is the ventilation system. I just wanted to again show you the piping that runs through. I know I said it earlier, consistent issues with sewage leaks, water problems, water backups, rust of pipes, because they're old. So I just wanted to. We're going to head into the lab. A couple things in the lab. Our department was not designed to have a lab, but it's something that we need. So we've basically taken space in the basement, and we've done our best to fit it with a lab. So we have super expensive technical equipment in an area, I don't know if you can see it or not, but I'll show you in a couple of different places where the lab takes the brunt of some of those sewage issues that we talk about. So if you can think of this technical expensive equipment in an area with sewage leaks. Those are things that are an issue. We've checked it out, and I believe the figure is $90,000 to have the appropriate ventilation system for this lab. So no matter what we end up doing, it's going to be roughly $100,000 just to get the ventilation in the lab up to where it needs to be, and that doesn't include the issues that we currently have with sewage system piping, etc. So as we come through, This is where evidence gets put into the evidence system and then gets placed into lockers. And then as we come into the next room, you'll see that a lot of the processing occurs in here. So we have basically an old storage or tool area room that we are currently doing high-tech evidence processing, from fingerprint analysis to drug analysis to different things. But this is the space that they currently have to work with, and it's definitely not something that we wish they had something better. Actually, before we go further, I'll mention this. Whenever marijuana is seized, it's generally tested in this area of the lab, between these two rooms. And the ventilation system is so poor that you can actually smell the marijuana outside of the building when you come in, and it's super strong next to the men's locker room. So the ventilation system is so poor that there's really no way to protect people from the odors, especially from the marijuana and other things that are collected and processed here at the police department. I don't know the value of the machine that's in front of me, but I know it's super expensive. It's a mass spectrometer. It was just purchased for processing of drugs and drug analysis, etc. Within the same room that the mass spectrometer is, there's a closet. In this closet, they generally have to paint over it a handful of times a year. There's more sewage piping, and this generally tends to be one of the primary areas that we end up with sewage leaks. So the pipes and the white walls that you see in front of you generally are stained a different color, or often are, and they have to be repainted, touched over, cleaned out. So that's really a major issue for us here. Same thing goes in this room. There are more, if you want to follow me through. More areas of storage and processing, and a perfect example for you of the sewage leaks is one that looks like it's fairly new on the ceiling currently, and that again is coming down the wall in this room. So constant problems is what the officers put their evidence into the computer system, and as you can see, there's a half wall that's been put up. This room has been redesigned, I guess, or this space has been allocated to use, but it's not really the appropriate space. If you come in a little bit further, you can see that there were different wiring fixtures, electrical fixtures that were moved in order to get the space to work. A half wall was put up in order to cut the space down so that we could use it. And again, carpets, old, damaged, holes in the floor from other things that had been here previously. But we just, you know, how much money do you put into a building that's already causes you some issues? So we try to do the best with what we have. But again, cleanliness is an issue in buildings like this. Again, from the ventilation system, you probably see some dust and other things that are clinging on the walls and what have you from bad piping and different things, and then a half wall to try to make the space fit what we needed to. So space was not intended to be a lab locker and or evidence location, but that's currently what it's used for. So as we continue in the basement, I'm going to show you one more area, which is our training unit and the desks or the office space for our lab personnel. Again, training is paramount. We do training all the time. We spend a lot of money on training. We want people to be up to date. Again, there are some high liability areas from firearms, which you guys got to see earlier. There's very limited space for range space. Driving, defensive tactics. There's no area in this building for us to do any sort of defensive tactics training or force-on-force training. We actually have to go to different places, the Y Center or somewhere else, to be able to do a lot of our own training. So again, almost every other department that I'm aware of has training space allotted for their people. But as we go into the training unit, you'll see that they have a very small office, and that's the only space that's allotted for training, even though training is, you know, it's paramount. It's one of the most important things that we do here. So making sure that our officers do the right things for the right reasons and what have you, so training is important. As we come into training, we have one sergeant, one person from records that assists with paperwork and what have you, and then one officer that's in this space, and this is the allotted space for training. Again, no training room, limited firearms space, limited storage, so they got to do the best they can with what they have. As we move through the training area, we'll pop into the area for the lab. Again, as you can see, hard to get into, things that need to be saved, stored, whatever. We don't have locations for them, so a lot of that storage space fits right in with desk area and what have you. So you have roughly 6 or 7 people that work out of this area. They're kind of jammed in there. There's no privacy space, and desks are old, the equipment's old, and again, this area was never designed to be an area for the lab, but because we don't have a spot for them, this is where they've been placed. So they do the very best. Again, we look at the construction, the same thing as we talk about upstairs. It's not friendly, it's not warm, it's brick, damaged tile, old tile. Again, you just saw an officer come out of what is a men's locker room and bathroom. There are 2 showers in there. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. There are often backups from water and sewage into the men's bathrooms that are currently there. The locker space, there's not enough locker space for the amount of people that use the lockers. And on top of that, the lockers are an old style locker where they have a very small cubby, and then they have a larger locker, but with all of the gear that's handed out, it's just not enough space per person, and again, we don't have enough lockers to give them more. The other thing is with the technological advances in law enforcement, things like microphones for the in-car cameras, radio systems, body mics, and I could go on, flashlights. People need an area to be able to charge and store that kind of equipment, and there is 0 of that. There's no charging stations, there's nothing for them to do other than to take half of their equipment home with them, which is what they do. We're going to come back upstairs now. And as we go upstairs, I'm just going to kind of show you a little bit of what we have here. This is how old the building is and where it's at. You can see that a lot of the cement work on the steps is damaged. Most of the base of each of the steps is rusting out, so we have issues with that. I don't know what it would cost to fix the steps or redo the cement and tile work, but I'm sure it wouldn't be cheap. On top of that, again, just everything that's here is been worn and been used and been here a long time. So just an example, I guess, of the age and how wear and tear and salt and what have you has worked on this building. And I guess before we finish upstairs, let's talk about the roof a little bit. I've been here for 17 and a half years, and the first number of years we had major roof issues and water leak issues. So in order to fix that problem, they looked at the possibility of being able to go up and add another story. Originally, I think the building was designed to have additional levels added. But when they looked at the roofing problem and looked at the building, they found that it wasn't able to do that structurally. It wasn't capable of holding another story. So in order to deal with the roofing leak, they took and put dirt and grass and shrubs and different things. I don't know if shrubs is right, but some sort of plant material up on the roof in hopes that the dirt and the plant material would suck the water out of the roof and limit the ability for that roof to leak. So we do not have a traditional roof at this facility. We have one that has tons and tons of dirt and grass material on top of it in order to fix the roof leak issues that we had previously. So as we continue up, the detective bureau is to our right, but I want to go into the break room and to the officers' workstations. As we come into the break room, you can see this walkway used to have a door. It doesn't have a door anymore. The pins are still in the wall, but the door is missing. We come into this area, so for 140 employees, you have a workspace with 4 chairs as their break room and a refrigerator. Again, limited space in here to do charging of any devices and what have you. So if you want to come this direction, the best they could do for people was small little mailbox cubbies. So when people come into the police department, they've been a victim of a crime, or they want to do a walkthrough, this is what they get to see when they come through, is the mail and subpoenas and different things, because this is what we have for officers to store their equipment and gear. We've got damage to the walls, limited seating space, no microwave at the moment, I don't believe in this area. I believe there is one in the next room. So, because this space is small, for roughly, I think we have roughly maybe 60 officers on the road. We have 3 computer workstations. And mind you, every time that they do a report, every time they check their email, every time they do what have you, they have to come in to one of these 3 computers to do their work. And again, sometimes we have issues with one of these, so it drops down to 2. But this is the workspace for all of the patrol. And again, patrol is the backbone of the police department. It takes, almost every incoming call. And they are the ones that, with the citizen contact and what have you, they're the ones that would bring a lost child or something into the station, or a family that needs some help. And again, this is the space that we would have them take a seat in, would be the one that's behind you. It isn't big enough to jam people and storage into some of the same rooms. Odor, water, sewage issues, on top of ventilation issues. So those are all things that make it very difficult for being able to go on in the future with the current building.